Since the miracle of creation, man has been on an endless quest to build his own monuments and point them towards the heavens for all eternity. This quest has led to his fascination with a mystical and mysterious structure known as the pyramid. Now, 5,000 years later, and halfway around the earth, a new pyramid is being built, not to glorify death, but as a monument that will celebrate life and man's indomitable spirit to create, to achieve a greatness that will reach to the stars and span centuries. A greatness that will say, feel the power of the great American pyramid.
Located near the banks of the Mississippi River and the birthplace of rock and roll, has to be one of the oddest structures in use today. The Memphis Pyramid, which as of now boasts destination retail, once was a one-of-a-kind arena housing the NCAA tournament, legendary concerts, and NBA playoff games. However, neither one of those ideas was what the venue was originally intended for, and conspiracies surround its entire story. In this video, we'll explore the origins behind why someone wanted to build a stainless steel pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee, why their original idea didn't work out, and how the venue survived demolition to become one of the most unique hospitality experiences in America. My name is LaBreece, and this is Modern Ruins, Episode 21. This episode of Modern Ruins is brought to you by DraftKings. It's that time of year again where underdogs become champions and legends are born. It's a time where every shot counts, every buzzer beater echoes through history, and dreams are realized on the hardwood. As March gets underway, shoot your shot with DraftKings Pick 6. All new customers get a 100% deposit match up to $100 in Pick 6 credits when you deposit just $5 or more. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and sign up using code LaBreeceTV. To get started, select 2 to 6 basketball players and pick whether they're going to have more or less of a particular stat. Then track your lineup and compete against others for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and sign up using code LaBreeceTV. That's code LABREECETV. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Perhaps there was no place in the US, and maybe the entire world, that is more obsessed with ancient culture that isn't its own than Tennessee. Nashville has this Greek thing going on, and Memphis, the state's second largest city, has its own Egypt thing going on. In 1819, the US Congress formally ratified the Treaty of Tuscaloosa, in which the Chickasaw Nation ceded their land in western Tennessee to the US. It would be only 5 months later that future US President Andrew Jackson and his entourage would establish a settlement on the Mississippi River that Spain had originally used as a strategic point to starve off US encroachment into their territory and keep tabs on the political affairs of the Chickasaws. Jackson and co. named their future metropolis Memphis, which was the ancient Egyptian capital of the Nile River, establishing their ambitions for the new city. Fast forward almost a century and a half later, and local concept artist Mark Hartz took this homage to another level, conceiving of 3 pyramids that would sit on the South Bluffs of Memphis overlooking the Mississippi River, and be constructed at 2/3 scale of the original wonder of the world. At the time, it was a very novel idea, and his conceptions never became more than that. However, around the same time, a rival steamboat town was in the process of constructing their own novel project. The Gateway Arch in St. Louis would not be completed until 1965. The arch stood as a monument of westward expansion in the United States, forever tying the Gateway to the West moniker to St. Louis, and brandishing the city as the capital of the Mississippi River. Whether anyone seriously considered building Hart's project over the next 3 decades remains lost to history at this point, but by the 1980s, local officials vocally called for some project of equal magnitude to rival the Gateway Arch to be constructed in Memphis, not only to boost the city's tourism industry and economy, but also to help celebrate Memphis's heritage with rock and roll and blues music, and to shake the negative connotation people had associated with Memphis, which was where Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated at the height of the civil rights movement, a scar that continued to plague the city 2 decades later. Memphis first started by constructing Mud Island, a name that would certainly roll in tourists. The attraction featured an amphitheater, a museum, restaurants, trails, a boat ramp and marina, and its crowning attraction would be a replica of the Mississippi River from Cairo, Illinois to New Orleans, that in length would be the equivalent of 5 city blocks. It took very little time after the park opened in 1982 for the city to determine that this was not the renowned attraction they were looking for. By this point, Mark Hart's son, John, a renowned concept artist himself, resurrected the pyramid idea, completing a rendering that showcased a glazy bronze glass pyramid on the South Bluffs of Memphis. However, neither dad nor son had any clue what such a structure would be used for, and once again just left it as an intriguing idea. This quickly caught the attention of local entrepreneur John Tigert, who had made his fortune primarily on a patent he held for the Glub Glub duck toy that bobs up and down, and some other equally mundane inventions. Somehow, Tigert became acquainted with Sidney Schlenker, at the time the owner of the Denver Nuggets NBA franchise, after briefly running the Houston Astros, and had been the longtime event producer of the Astrodome, with the late Roy Hoffheinz's eccentricity rubbing off on him. Their idea was to build a wild entertainment venue, as Tigert's son Isaac had co-founded both the Hard Rock Cafe and House of Blues restaurant chains, and Memphis was historically significant to blues and rock and roll music, being home to B.B. King and dozens of other artists, including Elvis Presley, during his time at his Graceland estate. Paired with the dull Mud Island, the two planned to construct Hart's & Sons Pyramid in a $110 million theme park attraction they called Rocopolis. However, in a promotional video the two released, they laid out their ideas separately as the Great American Pyramid and Music Island. In the pyramid, they teased it would have a rock and roll museum, an immersive Egyptian experience featuring a laser and light show, a Hard Rock Cafe, a global radio station in the apex which would have a glass elevator for spectators to visit, and the ultimate jukebox which would act as an encyclopedia of music and have information on every song ever written. Lastly, the two landed on using the bulk of the empty space in the pyramid as an arena originally intended for primetime heavyweight fights and the University of Memphis men's basketball team. It's unclear whether the two agreed that this was in fact the best use for the space, or if it was a consolation to get local officials on board and for funding, as at the time, Memphis had no professional sports teams. Music Island would feature amusement park rides, themed restaurants, and other attractions, including a chain of theaters they suggested would play holograms of iconic musicians, have live impersonators of others, and another that allowed you to record and then perform your favorite songs on live TV. The development was certainly the most outlandish idea anyone had ever brought to Memphis, but unlike the charismatic and political schmoozer Roy Hoffheinz in Houston, Schlenker couldn't charm an already poor Memphis to offer any public funds for the project. Tigert and Schlenker then had a falling out, and most of the ostentatious aspects of the project were scrapped. Schlenker sold the Denver Nuggets in 1989 for an estimated $65 million, and pushed through with the Great American Pyramid, now just a simple enclosed arena, lacking the public buy-in that projects of this magnitude typically have. Ground was broken on September 15, 1989, and construction continued for the next 2 years. Schlenker flew into the groundbreaking ceremony by helicopter and dropped a 75-foot-tall illuminated prop shovel into the ground and displayed a laser light display into the sky that outlined the future pyramid silhouette, spending an estimated $440,000 on the event. Rosser FabRap International was the official architectural firm for the project, with Walter P. Moore & Associates acting as the structural engineers, and Huber, Hunt, and Nichols serving as the general contractor. Construction of the arena was slower than expected due to weather conditions and flooding, being so close to the Mississippi River, and somehow Schlenker managed to get everyone paid despite having not financed construction. In the year the pyramid opened, Schlenker ended up filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, and the court allegedly barred him from ever entering the building he brought to reality, and the city of Memphis took over the newly completed arena. Now, here's where things start to get weird. Before the arena opened, allegedly workers adding the finishing touches to the pyramid's apex discovered a metal box welded to it. After consulting management, they removed it and cut it open, discovering a crystal skull and potent incense. John's son Isaac Tigert had associated with Hindu guru Sai Baba, who thought he himself was a god, and did so through blessing material objects. Tigert wanted Baba to bless the pyramid in order to protect it from evil spirits, but was too frail to travel from India to Memphis, and so instead he blessed a crystal skull to act as a apotropaic object, which Tigert brought back to Memphis, stuck in a metal box, and welded it to the top of the pyramid. When workers discovered the box, the Tigerets were no longer part of the project, and so when he found out the skull had been removed, he was livid, and said there were other undiscovered mystical objects located throughout the building, but that wasn't enough to overcome the bad luck that removing the skull was going to cause. The president of Memphis Tourism, Kevin Kane, later confirmed the whole story, but it's unsure whether Tigert ever got the skull back. With a fresh curse placed on the building before the ribbon cutting, on November 9th, 1991, Pyramid Arena, or more commonly referred to as the Pyramid, and later called the Tomb of Doom, officially opened as the largest pyramid on the continent, at 321 feet tall at its apex, and complete with a fiberglass statue of Ramses II out front. It was completed with a capacity of 20,000 fans for basketball at a cost of $65 million. The inaugural feature was a concert by Wynonna and Naomi Judd, and despite being the venue's first event, the concert is more commonly remembered for toilets overflowing into the arena's hallways due to the lack of appropriate infrastructure, and workers had to contain the mess with sandbags. Also, concertgoers noticed immediately that the acoustics of appointed venue weren't the greatest, saying that they got 2 concerts for the price of one due to the reverberations. Shortly after the venue opened, the University of Memphis Tigers became the Pyramid's first full-time tenants, finishing 23-11 in their first year at the arena, and eventually making the Elite Eight of the NCAA tournament that year, led by future 3rd overall NBA draft pick Penny Hardaway. In addition to the Tigers, the Pyramid also hosted 2 SEC and several other conference basketball tournaments, in first and second rounds of the NCAA tournament in 1995, 1997, and 2001. Apart from college basketball, the Pyramid also became the go-to concert venue for the region, hosting countless shows, none more notable than the star-studded 25th anniversary concert for Elvis Presley, marking 25 years since the Memphis local passed away. It wouldn't be until the end of the decade that Memphis would finally receive its first modern-era professional sports franchise. At first glance, that seems like an incredibly positive threshold in the Pyramid story that would establish it as a premier sports venue, but it actually did the exact opposite, instead calling out the arena's limitations. The story of how Memphis got an NBA franchise actually starts in Toronto, where given the success of the games played there by the NBA's Buffalo Braves and exhibition games later on, the NBA seriously began considering their first international franchise in the Canadian city, their interest reaching new heights when the municipal government completed construction of a state-of-the-art stadium in the Sky Dome. At the same time, the owner of the Vancouver Canucks of the NHL, Arthur Griffiths, was developing his own privately financed arena for his hockey team, but his secret ambition was really to lure a lucrative NBA expansion franchise to the city, and after the NBA crossed the border into Toronto, Griffiths began calling for an expansion franchise to be placed in Vancouver, and for him to be the owner. The NBA Board of Governors would approve the Toronto Raptors franchise in 1993, followed by the Vancouver Grizzlies in 1994, both beginning play in 1995. Despite being young expansion teams, the NBA denied each franchise the right to a top 5 draft pick their first several seasons and limited their salary cap, significantly hampering both teams' performances. Cost overruns on his new arena and the expansion fees passed down by the NBA ended up forcing Griffiths to sell his NBA franchise before the Grizzlies ever took the court, and they were sold to Seattle telecommunications tycoon John McCaw, who vowed to keep the basketball team in Vancouver. However, on top of limitations passed down by the NBA, the Grizzlies were poorly managed both in the front office and on the business side. This had a chicken and the egg relationship with the team's poor performance and consequently low attendance, when they were winning only a fifth of their games. Other factors working against the Grizzlies were weather and the foreign exchange rate, as NBA revenues were collected in Canadian dollars but paid out in US dollars, resulting in team salary discrepancies compared to similar roles on US-based franchises. The harsh weather also proved to be unpopular with free agents, who many publicly stated that they would never play for a team in Vancouver. As a result, Once John McCaw got a hold of the team's books and a better understanding of their prospects, he began looking for a way out. He initially agreed to sell the team locally, but ended up using the deal to leverage a higher offer from the owner of the St. Louis Blues, who offered a 25% bonus on top of the $150 million price tag if the team successfully moved to St. Louis. NBA Commissioner David Stern and the NBA Board of Governors condemned the move, shaming the notion of having an incentive to move the team be built into the deal. Stern stating that the league had not had a relocation since 1985, and that was important to league stability. Despite no vote or formal reprimand, the owner of the St. Louis Blues allegedly paid McCaw a fee to back out of the deal. That's when Chicago business tycoon Michael Heisley bought the team after committing to stay in Vancouver. However, just like McCaw, once Heisley got on the inside, he quickly began calling for relocation, blaming prior owners and fans for ruining the team. He claimed the franchise had a loss every year of its existence, bleeding tens of millions of dollars in cash. After publicly expressing his frustration and disdain for Vancouver, half a dozen cities picked up the phone to make an offer. Anaheim, New Orleans, Memphis, and Buffalo all had existing arenas and therefore could make an easy relocation. Louisville made a very convincing bid and promised to build a brand new arena, with Tricon Global Restaurants, known today as Yum Brands, offering to pay for part of it. Anaheim also came in with a strong offer, but already had a split market. In addition, the team would have had to share revenue at Arrowhead Pond with the Walt Disney Company, the owner of the Anaheim Ducks. Louisville and Memphis ended up placing very competitive bids, and that's when the founder of car part retailer AutoZone, Pitt Hyde, stepped in, saying that he would be willing to purchase a 50% stake of the team if they moved to Tennessee. In the end, Heisley selected Memphis due to better city leadership, but Louisville ended up building the arena they planned for the Grizzlies anyway, and opened as the KFC Yum Center. While Memphis did have the Pyramid, it wasn't considered a viable long-term home for an NBA team. The arena lacked luxury suites and club seats that had become all the rage across the NBA since the construction of the Palace of Auburn Hills in Michigan. NBA players commented later on that the backstage layout, such as locker rooms and their location, was very strange compared to most other NBA venues, alluding that the Pyramid was just not set up to host NBA games day in and day out. The shape of the interior of the venue, coupled with the lack of a suitable temporary home nearby, made officials quickly dismiss renovating the Pyramid. As a part of their agreement to relocate to Tennessee in 2001, the Grizzlies would use the Pyramid until a new $200 million arena was completed, and the new FedEx Forum opened for play in the fall of 2004. The Grizzlies didn't have a winning year at the Pyramid until their final season there, finishing with a 50-32 record and losing in the first round of the playoffs, the only professional playoff contests the venue would ever host. The team mandated a non-compete clause be placed on the Pyramid after FedEx Forum opened, and whatever events officials could get locked down before the non-compete clause went into effect would be the final events the once Great American Pyramid would ever host. Even when the Grizzlies played there, several notable events came to town, namely a long list of primetime fights, the biggest being the Lennox Lewis-Mike Tyson fight in the summer of 2002, with countless celebrities in attendance. Lewis would defeat Tyson by knockout in the 8th round, but Tyson would gain redemption the following year, defeating Clifford Etienne by knockout in the 1st round. The Pyramid was briefly used as a soundstage for the movie Black Snake Moan, which starred Christina Ricci, Samuel L. Jackson, and Justin Timberlake. Once filming was complete, the final concert, and therefore final event held in arena form at the Pyramid, was a rock concert by Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band in February 2007. When Seger found out the arena was closing, he insisted his manager book the venue on their next tour, saying that despite the acoustic challenge, it was a beautiful eye-opening venue, and that he was honored to close it out. After the concert, the Pyramid went dormant. The glaze from its stainless steel facade continued to remind Memphis residents of its existence, but the reminder was now of an eyesore as the clock was now ticking, with every day that slipped past decreasing the likelihood the vacant arena would survive demolition. The city then commissioned a study that concluded that the best reuses of the Pyramid would be a casino, an aquarium, a shopping mall, an indoor theme park, or a megachurch. And given the recent and successful conversion of the Compaq Center in Houston to a megachurch by Lakewood, it was thought that this was the best repurpose for the venue, but there simply wasn't a church large enough nearby to afford a $700,000 monthly utility bill or grand renovation. However, just a few months after the last Grizzlies game, billionaire and founder of one of America's largest outdoor-themed retail chains found himself exploring the now silent, monolithic wonder, pondering his own first-ever conversion. John Morris, the founder of Bass Pro Shops, had been made aware of the vacant property when locally based TV personality Bill Dance pitched it to him on a fishing trip in the Mississippi River. Dance argued that not only was the pyramid novel and large enough for designing a one-of-the-kind hospitality and retail experience, but that its prominent location near the center of the US population made it a viable destination for tourists. The city had come close to an agreement to make the venue home to the Grammy Hall of Fame, but negotiations were scrapped after it was revealed that the party representing the Grammys were planning on splitting the venue across multiple sites. After 3 years of negotiating with Morris and his team, it was announced that they had an early agreement with the city of Memphis to reimagine the structure, but the release was light on details, and people were more likely to have taken the original Rocopolis announcement more seriously. Then, after another 2 years of negotiating, the two parties formally unveiled their plan. Bass Pro Shops would pay the city for a 55-year lease at the Pyramid, which would become a Bass Pro Shops mega store. Included would be never-before-seen ideas, such as a cypress swamp water feature, saltwater aquarium, the tallest freestanding elevator in North America, an observation deck, a freshwater aquarium, multiple restaurants, a 100-room hotel, an archery range, a shooting range, a laser arcade, bowling alley, and the largest floor space featuring sports and hunting merchandise in the world at over 500,000 square feet. The deal also called for Bass Pro Shops to help revitalize the Pinch District neighborhood next door, and in total, the project cost around $215 million and was covered by municipal bonds, with the city contributing an additional $30 million outright for infrastructure and seismic updates to the building. Construction didn't begin in earnest until 2012, with crews boring huge holes into the side of the structure to haul out the concrete grandstands one dump truck at a time, where afterwards Bass Pro Shops began building their outdoor wonderland inside the pyramid, and construction would continue for the next 3 years. Finally, after nearly 10 years of waiting, the new Bass Pro Shops at the Pyramid opened for business on April 29, 2015 at 6 p.m., with a roaring crowd in attendance for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. It was a surreal moment, as what in most cases is a sad story became one with a happy ending. More than that, the conversion seemed like a success. More than 3 million visitors came to the pyramid in its first full year, and it generated over $56 million over that same period of time. However, critics say the city originally estimated that the development would bring in over $100 million its first year when issuing bonds for the project, and experts say the development is underperforming compared to other megastores. As bizarre as the pyramid is, it has quite a heartwarming story. So far in 20 episodes of Modern Ruins, we've only covered one other sports venue that was successfully repurposed, so this is quite a rare feat. To go from crazy, insane idea to reality is one thing, but to then reimagine that original crazy idea into another crazy idea is all the more challenging. With that said, after 3 decades of existence and 10 years as a Bass Pro Shop, the pyramid is still going, but that's not going to be the case forever, and in my opinion, the only reason John Morris decided to go forward with this project was because the city would pay for it, and given the results, no private company could justify spending the capital on their own to build such a project, meaning that the pyramid is likely to be one of a kind for the foreseeable future. But if I was a Memphis resident, I wouldn't get too comfortable assuming the megastore is going to be around forever. So, if you haven't gotten to the Memphis Pyramid yet, definitely check it out. Who knows? There may be another crystal skull somewhere, just waiting to be found. And on that note, thank you for watching. Subscribe to LaBreeceTV for more Modern Ruins content. And be sure to comment what Modern Ruin you'd like us to cover next.